we're going to solve these rational equations, and we want to be able to state the non-permissible values before we solve. Okay, now it's written twice because it's really important. Actually, it's just a typo, but make sure that you state your non-permissible values. Now, to state the non-permissible values, we're only looking in the denominator, and we need the factors because we need to know any time that we have a factor of 0, we're going to end up with a 0 in the denominator. So our first step then is going to be to factor. So I'm going to factor two numbers that multiply to 6, add to -5. That should be -3, -2. Okay. And then two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to -6 are going to be -4, -2. Okay. Now, we don't want to multiply both sides by, if we just cross multiply this, what we would end up doing is we would end up with an extra factor of x minus 2, because since that's a common factor, we don't need to multiply both sides. We don't need to use both of those factors to cancel out the x minus 2 factors. We only need one of them. Okay, so that's why we use the lowest common denominator. Okay, so we're only going to use one x minus 2, one x minus 3, one x minus 4. Okay, so and this is really important that we don't double use factors when we don't need to. It gives us more complicated expressions to deal with, and not only that, in higher degree expressions that we need to deal with, it also will give us potentially extraneous solutions that we don't really want. Okay, so here just now there's lots of factors involved, so I just got to start being a little bit more careful with what I'm doing. But x minus 3, x minus 2, those will cancel out, so I'm going to multiply by x minus 4 times 2. Okay, so there's my 2 factor, and then I have my x minus 4. So when I'm doing the next part here, I have an x minus 3x factor, and x minus 4, x minus 2 cancel out, so I'm just left with the x minus 3 factor, so I multiply by x minus 3. Okay, so there's my fractions all cleared out. I've cleared out the denominator. I've undone the divide with this multiplication. Okay, and then I end up multiplying through by 2x minus 8. I end up with 3x squared minus 9x. So I'm going to solve this as a quadratic equation. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, add 8 to both sides. Okay, and I'm going to factor that and solve it. Looks like that is factorable. So 3x squared and 8. The cross diagonal product allows me to get the split of 11x. Okay, so it's going to be negative 8x. Oops, not squared, but just x. Negative 3x. And again, if you're wondering if it matters where I put these, it doesn't really matter. We could actually switch these around. All it does is switch the length with the width, and the width with the length. Okay, so my common factor this way is going to be negative 8. And the common factor here is 3x. The common factor here is just going to be x. And the common factor here is just going to be negative 1. So my factor becomes 3x minus 8, x minus 1. Solving for x, it's always going to be the back divided by the front, so it's going to be positive, the opposite sign, back divided by front. That's an easy way to solve the rational solution to these factors, and x equals 1. Okay, I should check my solutions. Okay, they do not get my restrictive values. Okay, oh, I forgot to state the restrictive values after I've mentioned all that. Okay, so my restrictive values are x is not equal to 4, 3, 2. Okay, so it doesn't hit my restrictive values. If I plug these in, it should work. So I'm just testing here. 2 divided by 1 minus 5 plus 6. 1 minus 5 plus 6 is going to give me 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. Here I'm going to end up with 3 divided by 1 minus 6 plus 8. That's going to be 3 divided by 3. That's equal to 1. Okay, so the other solution will also be the same. Okay, the extraneous solutions, as long as we don't use one of these restricted values, we won't get extraneous solutions. Okay, so some steps then. Okay, if we want to generalize this and figure out some steps to do this with, okay, the very first thing we want to do is we want to factor. Okay, so make sure that we know the factors, especially in the denominator. Okay, but in the numerator as well, because there's opportunities where we can actually simplify the fraction before we do anything. So we want to factor. Okay, once we factor, we want to state restrictions. Okay. Once you state restrictions, we want to identify that lowest common denominator. Okay, and then we want to clear out, multiply by the LCD to clear out fraction, the denominators. Okay, and then we solve normally. Okay.